In this video, you will be learning about rotations. You'll be responsible for knowing how to rotate something 90, 180, 270 degrees, both clockwise and counterclockwise. Examples of those rotations are in front of you with some of Kevin's favorite toys. I thought that they were the best substitute for Kevin as he could not be a part of this video. So the easiest way for me to do this visually is to show you a coordinate plane that isn't numbered. And the reason it's not numbered is because when I do rotate it, I want you to ignore the numbers because they're going to change, because the axes are going to change. So right now you're looking at a point that has an x value of 2 and a y value of 1. If I were to rotate this 90 degrees, I would physically turn the paper. When I physically turn the paper, the x-axis becomes the y-axis, and the y-axis becomes the x-axis. So what was 2, 1 now has an x value of -1 and a y value of 2. So it started at 2, 1, and when I rotated it 90 degrees, it went to -1, 2. If it started at 2, 1, and I rotated 180 degrees, it means I flip it upside down. So the positive y becomes the negative y, and the positive x becomes the negative x. So the point that started at 2, 1 is now -2, -1. And when I take what was originally 2, 1 and either flip it to 70 or 90 degrees clockwise, what was 2, 1 now becomes 1, -2. So they're all different variations of the same pair of coordinates, 2, 1, -1, 2, -2, -1, and 1, -2. It's for you to figure out, and the rest of this video will show you how you can figure out what the coordinates are by what we call cheats. Like the example before where I flipped the paper said, I wanted to have it in writing for you, that if you start with a point that has any coordinates x, y, so in our case it was 2, 1, and you rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise, you're making the first quadrant into the second quadrant. So you're turning the first quadrant so it meets the second quadrant. So your y changes from actually being a y to being an x, and that is the opposite of whatever it started as. So our original point was 2, 1. The y value of 1 became the x value, but the opposite of it, so it became -1. And the x value became the y value. So the 2 that was the x value now became the y value. If this is confusing for you, always take that sheet of paper out, draw whatever you need to draw, and turn it, and then you'll always have clarity that that's what your coordinate should be. If you start at 1 and you do a 180 rotation, whether it's clockwise or whether it's counterclockwise, you're going to end up in quadrant 3, and both your x and your y value are going to stay put, but become the opposite. So 2, 1 becomes -2, -1. And if you take the point that's in quadrant 1 and you rotate it 270 degrees counterclockwise, or 90 degrees clockwise, you end up in quadrant 4. Your x value goes to be your y value, but becomes the opposite. So your x value of 2 becomes your y value of -2, and your y value of 1 becomes your x value of 1. So it was originally 2, 1 when rotated 270 degrees counterclockwise, or 90 degrees clockwise, becomes 1, -2. So we have spoken about the negative y's and the negative x's not meaning actually negative, but instead meaning the opposite of.